welcome to my favorite kind of panel. It's filled with writers, along with one brilliant multitasker, Sacha Baron Cohen, the team who created the template for the year's most outrageous yet utterly serious sequel, Borat Subsequent Moviefilm. And please welcome, along with Sacha, producer-writer Anthony Hines.
Hi.
And writers Peter Bainham and Dan Swimer.
Hello.
And Jenna Friedman. Welcome all. So I'm going to start with Sacha. I mean, this movie feels like it was shot out of a rocket. You were a man on a mission. Was there some eureka moment when you realized that you had to do a Borat sequel to accomplish this targeting of Donald Trump?
Well, yes, we knew that Borat was our most popular character. We wanted to make a movie that would be seen by as many people as possible and was a call to action. We didn't know whether anyone would actually vote after seeing it, but so the character with the most influence, the most popular one was Borat, and he was also the one that could, we believe, get Trump supporters to really reveal their true feelings, because he's a more extreme version of Trump. He's a little bit more misogynistic, a little bit more into authoritarianism, a bit more into caging children. So because he's more extreme than Trump, he can get people to come to his point of view. So yes, he was the one. And we also realized that if he had a daughter, that she might be a way to actually infiltrate Trump's inner circle and demonstrate the misogyny at the heart of that regime.
Absolutely. So how did you corral this particular group of writers?
It started off literally the day after the midterms, where I sat down with Anne and Dan Swimer. We were writing a different movie, and I said, is there a Borat movie that we can release prior to the election that might be able to make a difference, that is showing that we won't be bystanders? And we were writing another movie, they go, let's give it 15 minutes. And within 15 minutes, we came up with this idea of Kazakhstan are giving Borat's daughter as a gift to Mike Pence. Funnily enough, I've never mentioned this before. I told my agent, this was on Wednesday, we came up with the idea, we carried on writing our other movie. And on Monday morning, I saw in my diary, meeting with the head, Jim Gianopulos, the head of Paramount Studios. And I called up my agent and said, what's that meeting for? And he goes, to pitch the Borat movie. And I said, no, there's just one line. And he goes, well, you better come up with a story. And we had a 5-hour intense session. Me, Dan, and Anne came up with the story and went in and pitched it, and he bought it. So it was, we were, you know, Borat was so deep in us, so instinctive. And the story, once you realize it's a father-daughter story about a dad he's going to be the first Kazakhstani man to ever fall in love with his daughter. And it's the first Kazakhstani daughter to ever reject her father and his patriarchal system. Then it kind of writes itself. You know, there are wonderful templates. So yeah, that's how it happened. And then obviously we realized we wanted to create this daughter character. We're a bunch of blokes. And so we decided, obviously, we've got to get the greatest female writers in the world in. And we found just brilliant people. Erica Rivanoya, who'd worked on South Park, who'd done Last Man on Earth and a lot of hit comedies. Jenna Friedman, who's this brilliant feminist stand-up. And Nina Pedrad, who's this Persian comedy writer born in Tehran, and who really gave us that insight into what is it like to grow up in a patriarchal family as a daughter and still be completely in love with your dad. And that's really the key why this movie is fun to watch. Because Tutar, no matter how abused she is, she's going along, she thinks she's living the dream. She's on this Cinderella story until she realizes it's actually something that's going to destroy her.
Аз искам също да ям едно кексче.
Ма питам, лохлим, зелото.
Моля те.
Ивша ласот зел. Teenagers.
Please give it to me, Daddy, give it to me, give it to me, give it to me.
Okay, cheesecake.
You want to pick it out?
I will regret this.
So I thought it would be fun to go around the group here, and Jenna, maybe you could start telling me a bit about how did the casting of Maria Bakalova, for example, change the way she was written in the script, and how did you alter what you were doing on that basis?
So Maria, I saw Maria's first audition, and I've said this before in interviews, but I remember there was like a small portion of the audition where she could improvise and she had her own point of view. And I think that really helped. And I think that this character could have gone so many directions, but to have, and we were looking for her. We were looking for somebody who felt authentic, but who had a point of view and could hold their own against Borat, this iconic, hilarious character. And we knew that for her pranks essentially to work, she had to really have command of them and be fearless and strong and confident so that the audience could enjoy it, as opposed to there's so many beautifully cringe moments in this movie, and cringe is my favorite type of comedy. Borat is actually one of the first comedies that I saw, like when I just started doing stand-up, and I'm like, oh my God. So, but for Maria to really, for the character of Tutar to work, it needed to, it was a very unique casting. And there were so many different brilliant actresses who we auditioned and thought about, but it came down to like the kind of Venn diagram of like, is she authentic? Is she believable? Is she fearless and in command of the comedy? And would she push back when needed to really give the audience the ability to trust what she was doing and laugh at it? And that's how we kind of found Maria.
So Dan, could you walk us through a little bit what the outline of this was like, and how you came up with like 100 pages? Is that right at the beginning?
The whole thing, concertina, the whole time, it would just keep expanding, and then I guess you would do like a pruning to take it back to the original outline, and then once again it would just start moving again. It was really difficult to keep it at just an outline, I would say. But it fairly quickly went from that outline to doing table reads, and so we needed to have a full written script. And I think it's only easy to see what those scenes look like when you write them out a little bit, So we fairly quickly got to what looks like a screenplay.
Yeah, I mean, there was a 100-page final draft screenplay
with the dialogue that racist cake maker would probably say. If
you made it up.
We read it out, actually. We had a read through, and we invited everyone we respected in Hollywood to come. And
Like who?
Well, we had Spike Jonze there. We had
Jay Roach,
Adam McKay, Seth Rogen, Jay Roach,
Sarah
we had
Silverman,
Jordan Miller. We had, some of the writers from Seinfeld. We had everyone we respected to just wanted a reality check of, is this completely crazy? Can this work? And the biggest question was, can this work emotionally, right? Because we knew for this movie to really be better than the original one or match it, it would have to offer something different, which was you'd have to empathize and really care about these characters. We read it out and it went down great. People were really laughing hard. And the question afterwards was, who are you going to cast as Rudy Giuliani? And I said, well, Rudy Giuliani. And they go, okay, you're crazy, completely mad. Just, we loved it, but thanks for wasting our time. And then the challenge was, how the hell do we get Rudy Giuliani or Mike Pence in a room?
Shall we have a drink in the bedroom?
What happened? There you go, my dear.
Okay.
There you go. Be good. You can give me your phone number and your address.
Should we slip your jacket?
Okay.
Put down your crumb.
Oh.
She's 15. She's too old for you.
Why are you dressed like
She's my daughter. Please, take me instead. Take my anus.
I don't want you.
No, take my anus. Do not have her.
I'm better than him.
No, I better. My back pussy very tight.
No.
But is it true that you actually wrote several different Giuliani characters as opposed to sticking to Giuliani? You had a Don Jr. scenario. Was there some alternative if you didn't get Giuliani?
The initial end target for the member of the Trump regime was Rudy Giuliani, and that's how it transpired. But we knew that we can't have this whole movie fail should he fall through or whatever, should that target not be realized. So yes, we had a plan B, C, D, and ultimately
and then my pillow guy. And bear in mind, just from a production point of view, some of the people that we were thinking of doing the Giuliani scene had Secret Service protection. And the question is, how does Borat get into that room? And that meant really, being ready for the concept of somebody shouting out to their Secret Service protection, help. And so we had I had training, and so did Maria, for what would happen if Secret Service guys come into the room and think there's a potential lethal threat to the person they're protecting. And so we had to, learn, okay, the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna hit the floor because they're gonna jump on you. And, we looked into a bunch of things that in retrospect, we probably would have got killed by doing. We had one idea, which was me actually being, living inside, being sort of plastered into a wall and being there for much of the day, and then managing to get out. And then we found out, we spoke to an ex-Secret Service person, said, no, they check the walls and they'll shoot. They find a body there, they're going to shoot it, And
I would also say that, Anna, right until the very last minute that we had to lock this movie, we were still trying somehow to get Trump himself, just even fleetingly, to appear in this movie. And we were minutes away from it, where we had Maria as the right-wing journalist that she ends up being in the movie. We managed to get her in with One American News, Trump's favorite cable news service, and we had her inside the White House being mentored by a journalist called Chanel Rion, and we were moments from getting her into the press briefing room with Trump when, ironically enough, a member of the mainstream media kicked up and said, wait a minute, who's she? She hasn't got press accreditation. And so that didn't happen. But we did.
Basically, this movie, unfortunately, blew a very promising right-wing journalist career for Maria. And so she's just ended up, nominated for an Oscar. She could have been on OAN. She could have been, could have been the next Hannity. Never mind.
So if we were to go back to the day that you cooked up the cotillion sequence, for example, one of my favorites, how describe for me, if you would, what were you? Why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? Why doesn't she have her? I mean, how did you come up with that whole scenario?
Jenna.
One of the things I loved about the first Borat was just like the way that Americana is, the way that Borat kind of investigates Americana, and coming onto this one and having a daughter character, you're like, what are the things that are like so Americana that we can just make fun of? And debutante balls and Southern culture, especially like when you think about misogyny and like the old school misogynistic elements of like giving your daughter away, and showing Borat and Tutar in that environment, there's just so much comedy to mine. And I think the period thing, I mean, I've been doing comedy for 15 years. Period jokes, I think when I started, were something that we all shied away from because it was like stigmatized or taboo or felt like hack. And so to revisit it now, I mean, I think it was probably like 15 years of bubbling to the surface of wanting to do that. And it was funny because like that to me is like the perfect type of comedy that you can push it as far as you want, because at the end of the day, this is a very natural thing that has been stigmatized, and people have such weird feelings about it in America. And so I just, on a personal level, I wanted to like, go all out on that scene and have her period and have it be something celebrated. There's more to the dance that I hope will someday be in extra footage.
But
What did we miss? What are we missing? Is there going to be outtakes? Are we going to see this somewhere else?
Oh, the behind the scenes for the whole movie is itself almost more interesting than the actual movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my favorite days on set, I think, was when we were working with the choreographer to choreograph that dance. And there was like this pitch for Maria to do cartwheels, and Maria can't do cartwheels and I can't do cartwheels. So I was like, what if she does somersaults? And she did. And she did them so well. And it's, there were so many gems in that movie that you just can't wedge into like the running time. So the dance had to just be condensed for time. But there is footage of Maria very committed, rolling around on the ground.
I think it's about 8 minutes long in that.
I think, by the way, that one thing, because I remember being a bit concerned about that scene until we got to the day, like you were saying, Jenna. And I think the way Maria was committing to it, and like Borat, didn't understand what the problem would be. No concept of like why anyone would be disgusted by this. And then they expose the hypocrisy and the disgust of that sort of thing by being completely innocent. And so they're having a blast. And so there's no sense of it being, they're not uncomfortable. They're having a fantastic time.
Jenna sort of nails it by saying it's celebrating something which is so long being.
I mean, it's so radical. I just love that. I still to this day, like the fact that we got nominated is just icing on all, like, I can't believe that we were able to get a period blood dance into like a studio feature. That's just unheard of. It's so satisfying and radically feminist that you guys let that happen.
Well, and I think it never would have happened if we didn't have 3 brilliant female writers in the room.
Yeah.
I think in what is a kind of male-dominated industry, our movie is so much better from having 3 brilliant women on the team. I mean, these are jokes which we never would have done. We wouldn't have done. Jenna also came up with this idea of the Pregnancy Crisis Center. We didn't even know about them. And the idea of they're a good target. How can we make that a comic scene? And then how can we fit it into this relationship comedy?
It hurt my stomach. Mm-hmm. And it will hurt my asshole.
Mm-hmm. If it come out, yes, because the arm like this, it can tear it.
Right.
I feel bad because I was the one who put the baby in her.
You don't need to feel bad.
I was just trying to give my daughter pleasure, and next thing I know, there's a baby inside her.
Mm-hmm. You keep calling her your daughter.
Yes.
Okay. Is he your father?
Yes.
This is your daughter?
Yes.
Okay.
So with all these ideas, I think the great achievement was to put them on the spine of this romance and this father-daughter relationship. So you've got this crazy scene of the period dance, but afterwards it leads to her beginning to doubt her fairy tale. Maybe this fairy tale, what is going wrong with me? Maybe I am unlovable. What is it? She hasn't realized yet the problem. The problem is the misogyny of this idea that she's going to be given as a gift, right? But we had to include all those moments that you would do in a normal romance and in a normal father-daughter or arranged marriage movie. We were drawing from a few different genres, the arranged marriage movies, romances like It Happened One Night, and even movies like where there are latent feelings like Brokeback Mountain, where Borat really is a latent father. Deep down, he won't admit it to himself, but he loves his daughter.
Absolutely. And you have someone like a real life addition like Janice Jones actually advancing that scenario. She's helping to raise the consciousness along the way. But you didn't know what she would do. And so you had to be able to build on that and change. Did you change course radically in the course of what the real people did?
Janice is a very good example of how fluid the writing process is with this movie. Initially, you start with a conventional 100-page final draft script, and then you try to get as much of that to play it out in the real world as possible. But so there are so many moving factors that you can't control. Some good, some bad. Janice was a good one. And we shot the first scene where Borat leaves Tutar with Janice as a babysitter. And she was such a sort of pivotal force in this movie, such a force of good, who would ultimately be the sort of fairy godmother and be the one person who pushes back and tells Tutar there's a different way.
I have a pain in my titties.
Maybe because you're giving away your baby.
Why would that make my chest hurt?
It should.
Why?
You're giving a little girl to an old man. That should make your chest hurt. It should make your heart hurt.
The scene at the end, when Borat is also schooled essentially by Janice and told, no, there's a different way, Borat too. That scene was initially scripted to be with a psychiatrist. And so Borat, he's left his daughter to her fate, Rudy Giuliani, and he's driving off and gets a pain in his chest. He goes to a doctor and explains, I have a pain in my chest. And it was literally a stiff doctor who would say, well, Borat, what you're experiencing is something called parental love. And what's that? What? And he had to explain to him, I love my daughter.
But she's a daughter. Yeah.
I love my daughter. This is not possible. It's more than possible. It's preferable and positive and a good thing. So go and get your daughter. And we then changed that to have Janice be reprised and have her give Borat that lesson. And so we went back to her after 3 months, probably from the first time we shot with her. And luckily she'd not figured out
us
in a Borat movie, and we were able to shoot with her again.
But you love her? You care for her? You care?
Yeah.
Okay. So shouldn't she make the decision on who she marries?
I mean, we always wanted to, there is an intense amount of planning, and you do plan for her to meet Janice and for Janice to tell her certain things and to educate her and then to go forward. And that to cause her to challenge her father's worldview. But I think Janice, and also obviously Judith that she met in the synagogue, and even Jim and Jerry, the guys in the lockdown, they were actually, for us, what made this, raised our game a bit from the first movie of like, these were people who were exposing goodness. And in a time when there's so much division, to meet these various people, and including these QAnon supporting, Trump supporters, and then they're the guys giving him a feminist message, saying, no, your daughter, women are equal to men. And this is a guy in an NRA shirt giving him a feminist message. And that felt like
there was
exciting to us.
That there was ultimately a message of hope and
reconciliation.
Essentially there's common humanity, and despite your political views, everybody loves their daughter, and everybody, No,
it becomes quite poignant and sincere, which I wasn't expecting. I never expected that at all. So when you get to the big scene at where you perform the Wuhan flu, Country Dave comes out. I was wondering if there were scenes in the movie like that where you questioned the danger that you were putting everyone into. Were there things you didn't do and because it was too dangerous? You did do this one.
We shut down the movie for a few months so I could shoot the trial of the Chicago 7. The first day back from filming that was in Richmond, Virginia, and it was a gun rights rally as well, with thousands of armed, mainly men, walking around in fatigues. And it was a bad day to have as a first day on set, because the FBI had just uncovered a group who had intended to carry out a mass shooting at that rally. It was a bizarre logic they had. They felt if they shot a lot of people, because there was only people with guns, there'd be a lot of dead, and that would somehow speed up the upcoming race war. So that's your first day of filming. And I remember saying to the crew, I go, listen, because how do you convince a crew to take that kind of risk? I mean, it's mad. And, there's one thing is how do you convince yourself to do it? And I just said, listen, we're making this movie for the election, right? We want to feel like we're doing our bit. We don't look at ourselves in the mirror on November the 4th and go, we were just bystanders, right? I'm not saying we can change the election, but we're making this movie to try and get our fans, to some of them to be motivated to go out and vote, right? So whoever wants to come tomorrow, come. No one's obligated to turn up. And in fact, one crucial crew member didn't turn up the next day. I won't say who. But, this was an amazingly brave and courageous group of people. These writers here, the cameramen, the field producers, some of whom were pursued by members of militias who put their names and photos up and were actually searched for in Washington state. So we're talking about incredible bravery across the board, and people, we're operating under complete secrecy. No one's even telling their families what they're working on, keeping this as a secret project for a year and living in very, very challenging conditions. So I really salute all the departments and all the members of the crew. It was unbelievable.
So were all the writers on set every day or some?
There's no set. I mean, you can't be on set because it's dangerous. They were, luckily because of Zoom, we could get people on Zoom. Sometimes Ant was there. You had a writer's room in the, Best Western we were staying in, but maybe one person would come out with me.
Yeah, Ant was on set a lot.
Yeah.
Or hiding behind a tree. I mean,
yeah.
On it.
So was it like you would have a day, you'd shoot and you'd reconvene all the survivors at the hotel, and you would like look at what you had done and go, okay, now we have to rewrite everything for tomorrow? I mean, what was that like? Was it a nightly thing?
Yes, it was. You have good days and bad days, good weeks, bad weeks. But yes, you're constantly recalibrating. And if we haven't got this and there's no opportunity to get it again because it's a one-off event, then that affects the story and you're rewriting the final draft script. And it's a constant sort of treadmill of.
And sometimes that's really challenging. So, for example, the lockdown house, right? That's a 5-day scene. I'm 4 days in the lockdown house, and then I'm going with those guys to this gun rights rally where we're going to find Tutar. So it's a 5-day scene. I'm in character for 5 days, terrified about it. And what we know that we're going to hope that Jim and Jerry, the two conspiracy theorists, help Borat to write the song. They start doing it. We're like, great, we're in. This is fantastic. But then the writers in the middle of the night, because I'm living with these guys in that house, climb up a ladder in the middle of the night, climb through the window, and we start rewriting the song. So this is a mad writing process because the end of the scene is me singing the song on stage.
Yeah.
And in the middle of the scene, they're rewriting the lyrics. So we have to incorporate their lyrics into the end of the scene.
And
During
there's no
shooting process.
Song, nothing. We know that Sacha's going straight from that house to a stage to perform it, and it has to.
Yeah, he hasn't rehearsed it yet.
Oh my God.
You're also writing like within that, but within everything, you're writing farcical elements. You're writing things to expose whatever, the good, the bad, storytelling beats. Even though everything can go wrong and does all the time, you leave as little as you can to chance. So you do plan out and you do plan interactions. You don't know exactly what they're going to say, but there are lots of interactions planned. And then Sacha obviously does a lot of improvising as well. But for example, in that lockdown house, like there's one purely comic moment when he puts a flashlight in the washing machine accidentally and he destroys it. And then he orders a new, because he feels bad, he orders a new flashlight on Amazon Echo. And then a fleshlight, which is a particularly bleak sexual instrument, arrives via Amazon. And that whole thing had to be carefully. So there's dozens, possibly hundreds of little comic planned out moments. So it's like a military operation. Every joke has to be, because normally you could just write a joke in a scene in a normal dramatized film, and then somebody turns up with the prop, but you have to make Fleshlight actually arrive and then hand it to, it's very complicated.
Without getting too much into like how the sausage is made, there's so much writing we do that isn't even part of the script, that we're writing speeches that we know are never going to end up on camera that have to be like believable, or like we're writing questions with the field team to help cast the perfect person who's going to have this point of view critical to our story. So there's so much writing that goes
creating
on.
websites.
I would say to that end, the process to get Rudy involved writing another script for another project. Literally, to get Rudy Giuliani, we wrote a treatment for a documentary called Keeping America Alive, How Trump Defeated COVID. And we shot a sizzle reel and interviewed other participants for this documentary so that then we could present that to Rudy. And that's what got him to sit down with our documentary crew to be in a room with Tutar.
Yeah, it's how Trump had, through his swift action in response to coronavirus, had saved $1.5 million.
It's also nominated, actually.
For Razzie. I think he only got nominated for Razzie, didn't he? But the other side
he
of
did, yeah.
The other side of this that's really, really hard to do and was by no means going to work was obviously Borat, before this movie was made, was 1,000 times better known than before the first movie. And so Sacha had to go in disguise as Borat, in disguise as Frank Safari, these various characters.
Yeah.
We didn't know whether that would work comedically or at all, or whether it would look ridiculous, or, that was hard, wasn't it?
Yeah, especially because you still need to see Borat underneath it as a viewer, but obviously you don't want the target to recognize Borat.
Hmm.
I'm imagining you, Sacha, in this lockdown house, after the lights have gone out, sitting in your lonely bed, reading your lines for the next day. And how are they prepping you? You're not in touch with anyone, right? Or are you?
Well, one thing I had was, in the lockdown house, I had a locked cupboard with a key. And I remember the first night I go in, then open it up, said goodbye to everyone. And the crew had left for the night. Everyone had left. And I bring out my computer. This is Sacha's thing. So everything in the room is Borat's clothes, Borat's food, everything that Borat would eat. And then in this little cupboard, I had my actual phone, my actual computer, my walkie-talkie. And I'm on the computer doing some emails. And then I hear knock, knock, knock at the door. And it was one of the guys I was living with. And I was like, it was like a bad farce. I'm like trying to throw the computer out. And then women at the walkie-talkie. And then, hello, wait, one moment. What is it? Open up. And so, that itself was a challenge. But again, you're rewriting, again, I was in character there, because it was from breakfast till night, for about 14 hours a day. So about 70 hours. So there is writing. Obviously, we've probably got about an hour of material that we've written, but then, you're trying to keep the improvisation has to be believable enough that the writing slots in without appearing like writing.
Unbelievable. So Jim and Jerry turned out to be nicer or more friendly or more likable than you were expecting. How did that change the way you proceeded with them? Because you didn't write them that way, I imagine, in your imagination.
I think we wanted them to respond to him well enough that they would then go with him to a rally and try and go to that rally. But I think we were taken aback by how much they took to him, and they would take the director aside and just say, we're concerned about this guy. And I think it just made us then off stage, or when we were writing, then go, this is really interesting. And this is much deeper and richer than just exposing, these QAnon supporting guys. And it made us realize even more that, like, in the end, they've been duped. They're not bad people. They've been duped and they've been fed this horrible misinformation. And that's the huge problem of our times. It's not about individual people. It's what they're being fed.
That was it, in a divided America, we actually wanted to show that these people who many people would dismiss were actually good people who and they were not how you would perceive or expect them to be. These guys were feminists. You know, they try and convince Borat to admire and respect his daughter. They're trying to convince him that his daughter can do anything, that she could be a journalist. And so, again, it's absolutely right. You know, our movie really wasn't about exposing hatred. It was talking about how hate, lies, and conspiracy theories were enabling this slide into authoritarianism. So Jim and Jerry, they're good guys, but they're fed and sucked into this world of conspiracies on the net.
Well, as we wrap up, I have to ask about Borat 3. You've said, Sacha, I think that you don't want to do another one, but there seems to be a lot of ripe material that you could play with. Is this an option? Is this something that could happen? And if it did, Dan or Anthony or Peter or Jenna, what would you want to see happen? Yeah, you're shaking with horror.
Yeah,
I'm pitching him every day.
I have to say, I don't.
You must have PTSD from this.
I don't
movie.
fully.
I don't know if Sacha would want to potentially go through that again. It was really stressful, and the death threat,
grueling. Yeah,
I don't know.
Listen, there's not many actors have to put on a bulletproof vest to do a scene, right? And it's just, we brought the grey suit out of the wardrobe because we felt there was an existential threat to something that we grew up. We didn't even really know that we loved the concept of democracy. We took it for granted, but we were just really worried about what would happen after the election. I'd read this book called How Democracies Die. And, that's why we made, by the way, the prior show called Who is America? Because we were thinking, what can we do? What's our contribution to, trying to fight this, this dismantling of the institutions of American democracy. So, I think we did what we could. So I don't think it's time to bring it out.
You did great. Thank you. This was really fun. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
And congratulations.
Thanks so much. It was great.
Thank you.
Bye-bye all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.